Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
And this is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan Read the Paper. It's Sunday, June 21st, 2020.
Father's Day.
Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you very much.
And happy birthday.
Happy birthday to a cup coming tomorrow to Michael.
Right.
My brother Michael will be 60-something. I don't want to give it away. On June 22nd. Happy birthday, Mike. And later in the week...
He must be your older brother.
Michael? Yeah, he must be.
If he's turning 60-something.
Not if you listen to him.
Anyway, and happy birthday to my mom, Vivian Granger, who will be turning 95.
Even older than Michael.
Yes.
95. I can't wait till the big one comes. Then we'll have a big celebration. Mother's birthday is Thursday, huh?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so, happy Father's Day to you.
Yes, thank you.
And it makes me think of our fathers.
Yes.
And all the adventures over the years. What stands out in your memory?
Well, we're going to talk about the Belmont later. So it's a horse racing day, and of course, that I had a lot of experiences involving horse racing with my dad. So that comes to mind. It's funny. Every year, for the last X years before my dad passed, I would call him, and right before the Derby, the Preakness of the Belmont.
I know, moments before.
And we'd get his pick. His pick, and I'd put in my pick. And the funny thing is, my mother would even make a pick, which is weird because years ago, my mother was very much against this sort of thing. And it takes us back to 1978 when Alador had a great rivalry with Affirmed, and they had the greatest Belmont of all time. They two faced off. And I remember just as the race was about to start, possibly the most famous race in the 20th century, my mother turned on the vacuum cleaner and you couldn't see or hear the race. And I coolly said to my mother, that's okay. This will happen again 75 years from now, chances are. And somehow we got the vacuum off. But more recently, the last 20 years or so, my mother sort of was broken down. And they would each have their picks and I'd have my pick. And sometimes we were even right. But no matter whether we were right or not, I'd call my dad after the race and he would explain to me why things happened the way they happened, because the 5-horse was supposed to move at this point, he didn't make a move, so the 1-horse had to go on the outside, and that the 4-horse had to stay on the rail, and it was all clear to me. He explained it to me, so I understood it on a deeper level. So I miss going to the track and listening to my dad talk about racing.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, we've been thinking about all these food businesses, and I was thinking about my old food business, the Cranberry Food Sampler.
Yeah.
And how my father really helped us renovate that building. That was probably the most fun I had with my father. It was literally, working to renovate that building physically. He was an engineer. And he was a pretty smart guy, and he knew how, or thought he knew how, to fix most things.
Yes.
And
but that's a bigger truth, is that it's hard to see your parents in their fullness, and that one of the ways to do it is to experience something with them, doing what they're interested in doing what they do well, doing sometimes what they do professionally. And that opens up a new light, a new insight into who they are, and you relate to them a different way. And that was your experience with your father.
Absolutely. But I think that's true of all relationships.
Yeah.
Working together forms a bond in a way that no cocktail party chatter ever could.
Well, yeah.
Plus,
he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. He didn't always.
No.
But he could figure it out.
Well, he much more likely to know what he was talking about then than sitting around the dinner table talking about politics. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, happy Father's Day. And a lot of good memories there.
Yeah. All right. So we've been busy as always. And, we haven't talked recently about the kind of things we've been seeing on the screen. And the truth is, it doesn't mean we don't see anything, but we don't talk about it unless it's worth talking about. So we just pass.
Well, I don't even know if it's that. I mean, I'm a little reluctant because that's all there is in the news. Like what to watch on TV or what to stream, how to fill your time. So I feel like we're just being redundant.
When you see something that's worth seeing, the Times has an article every day now with 3 recommendations. And what we've learned from bitter experience is the recommendations usually don't pan out. It's just something to write about. But we did something which was interesting. It was Granger's idea, and by total coincidence, after we followed through on it, the Times suggested people follow through on this. the 2 days later. And that was to take a look at the Criterion Collection, which is in essence a classic movie channel, which costs $100 a year, but gives you, makes it available on a 2-week free trial basis. And what the Times recommended we do 2 days after we did it was you sign up for the Criterion Collection, and that gives you an opportunity in particular to see a documentary called Company Original Cast Album. And what Company Original Cast Album is, as you well know, but I'll tell our listeners, is a documentary by Pennebaker, D.B. Pennebaker, who famously made the Dylan documentaries, about the making of the cast album of the Stephen Sondheim's Broadway Musical Company. It was fascinating. It was fascinating. It was made in 1970. And here's something I didn't know, so I'll pass it on to you before I let you chime in on what you thought of it. It turns out, according to Pennebaker's website, that it was a huge hit at the 1970 New York Film Festival, so much so that a police riot squad had to be summoned to quell outraged turnaways who could not get into the documentary screening.
Huh.
And then it fell into all kinds of legal tangles, and it hasn't been available for years and years. And now it is. So what did you think?
Yes, it was very interesting. And it was great to see the different characters, like Elaine Stritch. Character is the perfect word for her.
Right.
And see her process. And to see the personalities. Watch Sondheim. Watching the performers, etc., and occasionally rolling his eyes and offering various comments. So that was definitely worth seeing.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be impressed. They're such perfectionists, and of course, they're skilled in their craft. So they could listen to a take. They could listen. The guy who was the head producer of the album, or Sondheim himself, will listen to a take that you think is fantastic as you watch them perform it. And they'll say, all right, well, drag here or drag there, or Sondheim pulls aside a singer and says, about 30 seconds in, you sang an F sharp instead of an A. And the person says, oh, yeah, I did that. And they go to, and they have to do it again. Yeah. And I mean, he's very nice about it. Mm-hmm. Eventually the most dramatic exchanges have to do with Elaine Stritch, because it takes 18.5 hours that day, and she's on at 3 a.m. and she's out of gas, and she's doing takes, and you can see Sondheim agonizing in the background, shaking his head after the first 2 bars of the music. It's another lost cause, and they finally put her over, and she does it a few days later, triumphantly. But it's so demanding that these people have to do it perfectly, and they'll do it, and they say, that was really great, let's do it again. They'll do 8 takes.
Yeah.
And you're rooting for them, because these are complicated songs. A lot of them sung very, very quickly. Right?
But it does, you get an appreciation for what's going on here, which is, a lot more technical than the just singing along we do to the radio.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, another reason that this has come up, gotten more publicity lately, it's not just that the Criterion Collection has been advertising it, but because there's been a parody that's been out for a few months called Co-op. And that was done by John Mulaney and
the comedian that we've been enjoying recently.
And what it is it's based on a close read of the Company Original Cast Album documentary. And they make up their own musical called Co-op, and they have the performers sing Sondheim-like songs and adopt characters that are similar to those who were singing the songs in the Sondheim documentary. And they're goofing on it a little bit. Well,
they're goofing on it totally, Daniel. That's what a parody is.
Yeah, you're right. They're goofing on it totally.
But here's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
How did they even know this documentary well enough to do that?
Well, you could get a copy of it if you worked hard.
I know, but it's just crazy that...
they spent a lot of time with it.
A lot of time.
Well, they have real people in it. They have Renee Goldsberry, who was in Hamilton, and they have Richard Kind, who does a lot of Sondheim shows himself. They have real people.
Yes,
and they're real singers.
Real people in it.
And the funny thing is, they have real songs that they wrote. They actually wrote songs themselves. And there was an interview with Sondheim. And Sondheim sorted out the parody. And Sondheim was asked, what do you think of their songs? And Sondheim was very diplomatic. Here's what he said. He said, I would have to listen again. The lyrics are crowded. It was fun to watch. Yeah. It was only 20 minutes.
It was a fun double feature for us because we watched the documentary and there, right away before we forgot everything we saw, we watched the parody, and so that was fun, and we kind of got the jokes.
Well, you can do it. I should mention that the company original cast was only 52 minutes long, so you can watch them consecutively. 50 minutes and then 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's doable. Yeah. So anyway, so we saw that.
Well, it must be doable, Dan. We did it.
Well, we do.
So things. You can go to Criterion
Collection
to see the documentary.
Right.
To see the parody co-op is on Netflix.
Netflix, they have a segment called Documentary Now. It's a whole, subfolder in Netflix.
And those are all parodies.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So maybe we need to go back to that as well.
Yeah. Well, then the question becomes, so we've got this 2-week trial on Criterion Collection, and are we going to keep it or aren't we?
Yes, we've got to make the most of it.
Exactly, at the moment. We've got to make our dollars count.
What will we watch tonight?
So then, a few nights later, we saw a Hitchcock movie called The Lady Vanishes, which is a classic movie. It's one of the last movies Hitchcock made in Great Britain before he came to the U.S., and it stars Margaret Lockwood, named May Whitty, and Michael Redgrave. Now, this movie's so old, it's 1938, that Michael Redgrave, who's Vanessa Redgrave's father, is a young man in this movie.
Right.
This is a long time ago.
Right.
And it was an odd film, but it was good. I think I probably got into it a little more than you did, because it's an odd tone, more than other Hitchcock movies.
Yeah.
It really had comical overtones. And
Granger and Nico,
they loved it.
The kids loved it.
They loved it.
So...
And it's for a movie that's 82 years old, which is shocking to even use those numbers. 82 years old, because as I was saying before, when we were growing up, no one would go back and say, let's watch an 80-year-old movie. Right. Because you didn't have 80-year-old movies. Right. I mean, if you were watching an old movie when we were growing up, it was 40 years old. So this is 82 years old. I mean, it's just amazing. And it was good. It was quite good. But then...
So it's kind of a spy thriller...
Yeah.
Mystery thing.
Yeah, it's kind of sensitive. It's a little bit like an incomplete sentence in that what happens is the Lady Vanishes is something akin to a kidnapping, possibly. That's the mystery.
Yeah, but it's also, there's all this intrigue on the train, so it's got a little bit of Orient Express in it.
And there are all these people who are kind of duplicitous, but the unspoken thing about it is the enemy, and it's sort of almost a wartime-like enemy sense of it. But they don't name the enemy and the villains, the bad guys. Yeah. It's 1938. They're on the verge. The world is on the verge of possibly fighting Nazi Germany, but apparently it's impolitic in a movie at this time in Great Britain to say the words Nazi Germany and cast them as the aggressors and the terrible force that has to be fought. They're not at that point yet. So you have this mystery thing. What's going on? Some unknown force is dealing with these people in a bad way. So it's kind of odd in that way.
Yes. And it's just completely over the top. And people have, Tom Cruise-esque skills in terms of jumping out of windows and trains, changing trains by hanging on the outside.
Even the old ladies.
Yes, even the old ladies. Exactly.
I should tell you one other thing. There was this two guys who were sort of somewhat comic relief. Characters are named Caldecott and Charters, who were like British semi-upper crust who are observing things on the scene, who eventually get drawn into the action, but until then they're comic relief. It turns out they were so popular when this movie was made that they were inserted in other movies completely unrelated to this after, just to do their comic bit. Okay, so then again, last night we we further took advantage of our Criterion Collection by looking at an independent movie, which Granger was able to find, called The Daytrippers, which is a movie made in 1997, directed by Greg Mottola. And it's a real independent type cast. At least these were independent. Parker Posey was at that time the queen of the independent actresses. And there are other people starting their careers. You had Hope Davis, you had Stanley Tucci, you had Liev Schreiber. You also had Ann Mira.
Not exactly starting her career.
Not starting a career, but not a big movie career. I don't think she made that many films, honestly. But she
made more than you realize.
She was a central character in the movie. So the premise, I think we can say the premise of the movie was this comic. and the movie is comic to a large degree, is that a woman who's close to her mother and her sister, and it's around Thanksgiving time, so people in the same area, stumbles across a note that appears to be possibly a romantic note written to her husband by another person. And in what's the most improbable aspect of the film, but sets up the film, she decides to share it with her mother to get her view on it.
And the next thing you know, the whole family is loading into the station wagon and driving from Deer Park into the city to confront her husband at his workstation. And hijinks ensue.
Exactly right. That's a perfect summary.
So it is. It's great family interaction, character interaction. It's just amazing. And of course, you're going to tell everybody the film was made in like 14 days, 17 days or something for $50,000. Right. And well worth watching. Yeah. Really a good little film. Yeah, okay. But it's not like Granger did any crazy research to find it. It was just one of the ones that pops up on the suggestions when you know.
But it barely did that. So here's the question to you. I mean, here's the dollar and cents questions. They always come to your doorstep. Do you stick with the Criterion Collection because you're only going to get movies like this on the Criterion Collection? In other words, the standard choices that appear on Netflix and Amazon are the ones with bigger budgets and bigger promotion. Some a little less so than others, but even so, this kind of movie is not going to be in the normal offerings that you see. So what do you think?
Well, this is what I think. If you and Granger worked this hard to find good movies because you had a free offer for 2 weeks, once you've laid down $100, you're going to really be looking to find. You're going to find some serious gems, and you're not going to give up till you do. Yeah. So I don't think it's a bad investment. But I mean, there are a zillion trillion things to be watching on Netflix. Yeah. So I don't know. But you shouldn't badmouth Netflix.
But you got to take the leap. You got to say, I don't know if this is a short winner. Maybe this movie's good. Maybe it's not. Let's take a chance. And
because you can never tell by the summary. Right. I mean, it doesn't matter what it's about. Right.
And the stuff that's recommended in the newspaper, frankly, is not always.
I don't trust any of them anymore.
And it's not very challenging.
They're just killing themselves to come up with ideas, they don't really care. Right. But we also watched another movie called The Wasp Network.
We did, yes.
And you're not bringing it up because you didn't like that movie.
No, I didn't think it was very good. It wasn't terrible.
Right. And so that was just released. It's a brand new movie. Right. And it's really about Cuban spies. Right. In the U.S. And, just kind of telling a story based on true events. Right. And kind of telling a story of people, relationships, and international kind of relationships from a variety of points of view. But in the end, it wasn't terribly compelling one way or the other. So that was a disappointment.
It's another example. It's a big article in the Times, big recommendation from the Times, and it was like NCIS.
Critics' pick.
Yeah. Critics' pick. But it didn't measure up to any of the other things we're talking about. Not even close.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things that, it's an interesting subject matter because the Cuba aspect and, thinking about Cuba, what is the future of Cuba? Cuba opening up to tourism. And of course, we're old enough to remember a lot of Cuban-American interaction over the years. So it seems like an interesting subject. So it seems like Times is going to say, this is a new way of looking at something. Right. Boom. Right. And
it seems to the extent it raises a serious political question. The question really is, should the U.S. be allowing foreign governments, namely Cuba, to operate spy rings in the U.S. to protect their interests? And let me cut to the chase. The answer to that is no. They shouldn't. They don't. And that's what happened in the movie.
Okay, but if you're interested in that, it's Wasp Network. Right. So not what you would think. No. I thought it was a bunch of ladies from the DAR having a tea party or something.
That's why we watched it. Okay, so the Belmont was yesterday. I mentioned the Belmont last week. I had lost track of the fact that it was coming up so soon. I knew it was going to be the first race, and indeed, in the Triple Crown, indeed it was. I knew that it was going to be 1.1 miles instead of 1.5 miles. And as you yourself pointed out, then it's not really the Belmont, is it?
No.
Which is a fair point.
But at least it was something to watch on TV.
Well, let me go to that in a second.
Oh, really?
Why? What were we going to say?
Nothing. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why I think there's something to that. Let me just go back to the Belmont thing. First of all, the Belmont was boring. Honestly.
Okay.
It was a terrible race. You had an overwhelming favorite, and Tis the Law, and 4-5 favorite. No other horse challenged them. It wasn't a great field. You don't have, usually the Triple Crowns open with the Kentucky Derby with 20 horses. There's only 10 horses. There was no one in the stands. Doesn't help. Not much going on. But to take your point, something to watch. Horse racing. The race before the Belmont, which you got to see because the timing was, it happened to be available at the beginning of the hour. It was called the Daytrippers Stakes, and that was a great race. Mm-hmm. And there was a horse, there is a horse named Alexandra, who was a filly, a female horse, 6-year-old horse, who was running in this group of male horses, all mature, 6-7 years old and the like. And yet the filly was highly regarded, so much so she was a slight favorite. But the word on her was that she comes from way behind. And sure enough, in this race, this filly, Alexandra, is last the whole race. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, with 15, 20 seconds to go, boom! Mm-hmm. And she comes flying at the rest of the field and wins by a nose, right? And her trainer says she's just so much fun to watch. She makes life very exciting. It's Neil Drysdale. And you're saying to yourself, that was an exciting horse race. And wouldn't you think that this is an opportunity for horse racing to step to the fore? Talk about something to watch.
To be more on TV?
Yeah. I mean, especially because people are interested in gambling. It's the gambling sport. Mm-hmm. You will recall that in the first 50 years of the 20th century, the 3 most popular sports were baseball, boxing, and you guessed it, horse racing. It's not like there's no history there. You could have horse racing in a way that apparently you're not going to have Major League Baseball or other sports. And you'd have to build up interest. I'm not talking about just to attract $2 bettors, but to build up interest in particular horses, in particular races. And there are high-profile races. Isn't this an opportunity for horse racing to do something?
But, horse racing, they seem more interested in like personal interest stories. Oh, well, but more so than the horses.
That killed the Belmont. Yeah. That killed the Belmont. Yeah. But the Daytrippers Stakes wasn't infected by that. Right. That was a real horse
But I know
race.
why that filly won.
Why?
Because, let's face it, I know why she runs the way she does.
Why?
Because, when you're in a crowd with like 6 or 7 guys, you don't want to be at the front with all these guys sniffing your butt the whole, mile and an eighth or whatever it is. Really. So she picks her spots and comes up at the right moment, Right. It's a matter of delicacy.
Really? All right, Tamsen.
But I do enjoy watching things like the Belmont and the Kentucky Derby because I don't like the long drawn out personal interest stories so much. Those are often very poorly done, but I do like all the little rituals. Watching them wash down the horses, watching the horses. Isn't there
the paddock?
The paddock, they parade around a little bit, and then I like when they, come up to the gate with, with their entourage. There's another horse next to them leading them. Right. I like interviewing all the different experts about what their pick is and why, and I like seeing what they wear because they, male or female, all those people seem to wear wackier stuff than normal commentators. And I do like the panning of the crowd and, seeing, of course in the Derby you have the ladies with the hats and so forth, but it's often an interesting crowd to see, especially the different gatherings for different horses, the owners and so on and so forth. So I do enjoy all that pomp and circumstance, and it was too bad it didn't exist for the Belmont. But I guess an exciting race would be nice too.
Yeah, well, anyway, the Derby's in a couple of months, and we'll see. We'll take it from there.
Right. Well, fortunately, we have plenty of mint ready for that. Yeah. The mint is growing like crazy this summer. I don't know what the deal is. Mint often grows like crazy. I guess that's why the mint julep got invented.
All right. So another
sign of the apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say, but this is brought about apparently by COVID-19. There's an article in the Times about chatbots. Never know what that means, chatbots, but here's what it means in this article. Apparently, what you can now do is you can sign up for what's called a chatbot that you can talk to on a regular basis, and it will respond in a semi-human voice in a way that you have a conversation that many people find comforting.
So it's a computer buddy.
It's a computer buddy.
And it's not like it's new. I mean, there was that movie, right, that we didn't see. Her, with Scarlett Johansson. Yeah. Apparently, all these bots don't really sound like Scarlett Johansson.
No. But they look like
Scarlett Johansson.
Which is part of the problem. That's the important thing. The deal is that the Scarlett Johansson bot in the movie was an advanced version. It's the movie. So they kind of were a little futuristic there. They say they'll get to that point. It might take 10 years. But right now, you got something short of Scarlett Johansson.
Johansson?
Yeah. I think that's it. It's Johansson?
I
should know.
I
should know. It's something I should know.
Hansen.
Yeah. But in any event, and yet, in April, according to the Times, at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, 500,000 people downloaded Replica, which is the company that makes the app, the leading chatbot, and are paying $8 a month for the privilege of having a conversation with their own bot. And what's interesting about this to me is that the bots get more sophisticated and benefit by input and computer learning, and they get better. It was invented by a woman named Eugenia Kaida, or at least developed. She a Russian woman came to the U.S. She lost a friend of hers when shortly after she got to the U.S. she missed his voice, and she realized that perhaps you could develop a chatbot that has a certain personality. She in fact included all of the texts that she had with this individual in order to inform
missed her friend. Yeah. So she wanted to invent
a chatbot which had a certain personality. Right. And apparently the chatbots do develop a certain rapport with the users based on the constant usage and the back and forth. Now, the chatbots can go wrong, and there are a couple of points here that I don't quite understand, but there are some things that chatbots don't discuss well. The chatbots apparently don't give the right kind of advice when someone's thinking of suicide. I don't know how often that comes up. Also, the chatbots have made some racist remarks or something like that.
Well, the problem is the chatbot's personality is based on all kinds of data.
Right.
That has been, uploaded into it, or that it's been exposed to. So
it reads all the data.
It really has developed that personality based on what it has read.
Right.
Okay. So if it's reading, if it's inhaling things from a certain negative perspective, okay, it develops that perspective.
Right.
Okay. So you have to be very careful about exactly how you're training this bot to think. But the thing that's interesting is people do like it.
Right.
Okay. People have felt, they have an example there of a guy who he doesn't really want to, at the end of a hard day, he doesn't really want to discuss his problems. He doesn't want to discuss his problems. He just wants to unload.
Yeah.
Okay. And he doesn't want to burden anybody. He doesn't want to unload all his troubles on his wife and give her that burden as well. But he wants to do that. And by doing it to this bot, he does that pretty freely. He, gets to, unload.
Yeah, it's therapeutic.
Except that the psychologists they talk to there say, yeah, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. If the answers, if you're just talking to some person some bot who's going to tell you what you want to hear, okay, that's still just like talking to yourself.
It is, but
okay? It doesn't take you anywhere.
What's interesting to me is people are getting something out of it, whether they should or they shouldn't, whether it's making them better people or not. What they say in this article is, despite its flaws, hundreds of thousands of people use Replica regularly, sending about 70 messages a day each on average.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
I understand it's a thing. May not be a good thing.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's probably preferable to just rolling around thoughts in your head with no way to express them.
I'm sure it is.
This helps to that extent.
Yeah.
But another approach would be the Nutcracker.
Yeah, I didn't know what this is. You caught me.
I didn't know what it is either. But there's an article in the New York Times, and the headline is "To-Go Cocktails Kick Bootleggers to the Curb." So you know that many places have legalized to-go cocktails from bars. You can grab a drink and go right out onto the street with it, okay? Right. Or even have it delivered to your house or whatever. This is kind of a new thing. Not really, okay? And the subtitle here is "Nutcracker Sellers Are Displaced by Restaurants and Bars Which Have Legal Cover." So that caught my eye because I said, what's a nutcracker? Well, a nutcracker is, in fact, a bootleg cocktail. Okay, and people have been selling them on the streets, especially, in New York, like Queens. And
Queens comes to mind.
Right, and other areas on the street corner, from coolers. All right, so before COVID-19, all right, they talked to this one guy, Mr. Faluque, and, they'd be on like street corners, summer crowds. Usually I can get $500 if I stand in one spot for 25 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. This year, all right, with public gatherings pretty much canceled, etc., he has gone like entire 3-day weekends making only $500.
Really?
Yeah. So for a couple of different reasons, people weren't out and about as much, right? But also he and the other nutcracker sellers have tremendous competition because you have the bars and restaurants who are allowed, legally allowed to do the same thing. Plus you have a lot of unemployed people, bartenders, waitresses, and others who have also gotten into the Nutcracker Act. So he has both legal and illegal competition, which has made it tough. Now he's got quite a thriving business. It even seems, the way they describe it, that he has employees. He has guys on other street corners, and he has, drinks with, cute names and, a following, etc., quite well developed. And so do these other people, even the other nutcracker. There are people selling illegally, and they're doing it through Instagram. Okay, Instagram is the medium for their menus and for them to be able to say where they're going to be or provide delivery, etc. through that. So interesting to me that these guys. No question about it. This is illegal.
Yeah.
All right. You get fined for it, but it's usually the fine is less than $500, and maybe a 1-day stint in confinement, jail, I guess.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a risk you may take in that situation. This is causing, to some extent, Mr. Faluque and some others. He's thinking of going corporate. He claims to be, he would like to distribute his products through a major liquor company if possible. But some of these other guys, including a Mr. Z that they quote, is saying, it's getting too rough. I might have had enough of this. But that's what a nutcracker is. So.
I never knew that.
Next time you're thirsty on the streets of New York and need a treat, there's a guy with a cooler.
Well, okay. News to me. So here's something from Japan. Teen sues government to challenge screen time law. Okay, what does that mean? That means that the government of Kagawa Prefecture, on the island of Shikoku, has moved to limit the amount of time young people can spend playing video games on the internet. And
all right, so some town in Japan made it illegal.
It's the equivalent of a state.
I mean, that's every mother's dream, right? Okay, you can't be on the computer anymore. No more games. It's against the law.
It is every mother's dream. The limit is 60 minutes on a school night, an hour and a half on the weekends.
Nothing I can do, sweetie. It's the law.
Exactly. And Nothing I Can Do did not work with a 17-year-old youngster named Waturu, whose last name is withheld because he's a minor, who has brought a lawsuit to upend the law as unconstitutional and found a lawyer willing to represent him for no fee. The interesting thing about the law is that even though these rules apply to anyone under 20 years of age, they carry no enforcement mechanism.
All right. So it's sort of a law.
No, it's a law in Japan, but the way Japan operates, different from the U.S., is that if you break a law, even though there's no enforcement mechanism, there is heavy social pressure to follow the official suggestions. So it has a certain clout. And we've discussed this, you see this in the wearing of masks and things like that. The Japanese don't have to pass a law that says everybody has to wear a mask. The Japanese just have to pass a guidance that say people wear a mask, and everybody wears a mask. Okay. That's the way they roll in Japan. So it does mean something and has a certain clout when you pass a law like this with no enforcement mechanism, particularly since the schools and the parents will pick it up. So this 17-year-old has brought a lawsuit to challenge it, and he has a lawyer who's been successful in recent constitutional challenges, even though they're not often successful. And when they interview some lawyers in Japan as to whether this will be successful, they say, look, it definitely does violate the Constitution to tell people that they can't use video games. Even minors can't use video games above a certain limit. That said, going back to the beginning, because there's no penalty attached to the law, there's a question of whether the high courts in Japan are going to take it up. They're going to say, look, what's the difference? You can ignore it. So they kind of play it both ways. And what you'd say in the U.S. law, you'd say, therefore, the person has no standing to challenge. The interesting thing we'll see how it goes legally, and maybe it's not important how the legal stuff goes, but as far as Wataru is concerned, he's following the rules, even now. I mean, he's against it, and he's challenging it, but he very much is in the category of those who feel he has to follow the guidance of the elected authorities. So
But don't you think when he's 18 and he realizes he's 20 now?
No. When he's 20, you're not majority in Japan until you're 20.
No, but I'm just saying, after he's been all this and he kind of realizes there's no enforcement, he might just say, what the heck?
I think he knows there's no enforcement. I think the Japanese culture is such that people follow the letter of the law.
He won't break out of it.
Yeah. So we'll see. But you're right. It's every mother's dream. And there it is. They're living the life in Japan. It just shows how cultures are different. And they could actually have such a law in Japan and finesse it in that way and change behavior. Okay. So you had something.
Right. I have an obituary for Thomas Freeman, who is one of my new heroes. Clearly, I'm late to the party here. He died at age 100, and he is famous for being the coach of the award-winning debate team at Texas Southern University. And he was a remarkable man. I mean, he started preaching at the age of about 9, even though he was petrified with fear, and just kept doing it, and somehow became this great self-taught speaker. He grows up, his father's a peddler, a vegetable grower. He grows up, growing vegetables with his father. He ends up getting an education, and decides he wants to be a preacher, and he goes to a theological seminary right after it has been integrated in Massachusetts, and ends up graduating the top student in the class. He had some very famous students, some very great speakers, including Martin Luther King Jr., okay? No matter what you think of Martin Luther King Jr., there's no question of him as an orator. And he learned this at Thomas Freeman's knee. Also, another great speaker, Barbara Jordan, the congresswoman from Texas, What a great speaker. And so he had a number of theories about life, about speaking as well. He taught his students to enunciate, regulate your tonal quality, pace your speech, use your breath and emotion so that when you speak, your words come alive. The team motto for his debate teams was, what we do well. What we don't do well, we don't do at all. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was, and he was more than just a speaker. I mean, he taught religion. He taught, he starts out teaching philosophy, and he sets up a debate as part of the philosophy course to teach an example in logic. Mm-hmm. And it's the school that says to him, hey, maybe you should start a debate team for us. So really remarkable, fascinating man, took his students abroad, really mentored them in many, many ways. And, as a teacher, I'm just very envious of his skills.
I spotted that article too. I mean,
and he taught a variety of places. Oh, he grew up in Richmond, Virginia, which is interesting to me too. And I just hope, wow, what an example to live to 100 and have that full a life and be quite that, influential in your teaching.
Well, I don't have as impressive an obituary here, but in some ways, well, the fellow named Harry Glickman, I don't want to put him down. He lived to be 96, and he was a great supporter of Portland. In particular, he was the guy who brought the Portland Trailblazers of the NBA to Portland. But it's interesting how life works in the circuitous route, because Portland was not an obvious place to have an NBA team, and you would need somebody who was dedicated to the cause. This guy was dedicated to Portland, but the truth is, he was involved more than anything in entertainment promoting, and that's what he did for a living. He promoted concerts, as they note in the Times, but he soured on the experience of working with high-profile entertainers after Judy Garland canceled a couple of tour stops at the last minute. Mr. Glickman said, she made a sports fan out of me. And because of Judy Garland, the Portland Trailblazers came into being in Portland and won a championship. So there you go.
All right. Thank you, Judy.
Portland has Judy to thank.
So here on, ending on a little bit of a sad note, or at least a bittersweet note, there was an article in the New York Times about Rebecca Luker, Broadway soprano. And she was about to put on a benefit for ALS. She was actually diagnosed with ALS, what we call Lou Gehrig's disease, just at the end of last year.
Yeah, and she's a great soprano. She's always been a great soprano. We've seen her in stuff. Some things less successful than others. We saw her in the one with Steve Bogardus at McCarter, which we didn't love so much. Do you remember that?
Right, that was just a concert.
Right.
But we saw a subliminal performance of hers in The Boys of Syracuse.
You don't mean subliminal. You mean sublime.
Yeah. I probably.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sublime.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
But yeah.
Sorry about that. It was
I had forgotten
a number of years ago.
Right.
In fact, it was about, I think it was like 1997 or something like that, a long time ago.
Classic encore performances.
And
Sing for Your
the
Supper.
song was Sing for Your Supper.
Right, forgot. Yeah.
And it's just one of those, so it was a trio. Mm-hmm. And there are moments in the encore's performances. It is not even necessarily the whole musical is a success, but sometimes you have a sublime moment of music, and that's exactly what this was. Right. It's not, it's a song I don't even care about, but these three women singing together had such a chemistry.
Right. I remember it.
Such a musical chemistry that it just took you out of yourself. this is what we miss, isn't it? This is what we miss. Yeah. Spontaneous moments like that. I've listened to the recording that they have of it. It doesn't make near the impact that moment in my seat in the theater made. And, no performance on the screen is going to do that.
There are many, many encore performances by now. And it's just one song in a show, which was good, but not great. But when they did that, it was encore after encore. When you walk around the theater at City Center, as you make your way to the men's room, let's say, and they have posters and pictures or something, there's a huge picture of the three of them singing that song, Sing for Your
That was just a great moment.
And she's been in Music Man and stuff like that. She's one of the leading Broadway singers in
many things.
Yeah.
So beautiful voice. And now she is losing her ability she's lost her ability to walk. She's still able to sing to some extent, although because singing depends on being able to hold yourself and have control of your diaphragm. Her singing has changed somewhat. What I also noticed sniffing around about her today was not only does she have ALS, her husband, Danny Bernstein,
had COVID-19.
And she did as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. At least she had all the symptoms. And
Danny Bernstein's been in a zillion things. He's in Moulin Rouge now, where he was.
Yeah, and they said he and a bunch of cast members from that came down with COVID-19. So anyway, part of this article was, asking her about, what is she going through? How is she feeling? What does she sound like? She says, I don't sound the way I used to, but my husband says I sound beautiful. And she, sings as, in part to give herself hope. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, it's an interview. If you can pick it up in the Times, you could read the whole thing. I mean,
it's very touching, and not surprisingly, she says one of the things this disease has taught her is to just value simple good health,
right,
and being able to just get around and walk.
Yeah.
She would never take for granted again.
Yeah, she does even make the point, and they said, has this been harder on you mentally or physically? And she replies, mentally, because you can slip into some real dark places. But in any event, so she was part of a benefit for the development of Procetin, I don't know how to pronounce it, a promising experimental drug that rescues motor neurons in ALS. Patients. So we wish her luck with that. We have really. I'm sure you can find that if you want to donate on the web somewhere. Yeah. Probably not difficult. Rebecca Luker. Okay. So that's all we have this Father's Day? Yes, I understand the kids are making dinner. I didn't know that. Is that right? Yeah. All right, I'm off the hook. We're hoping for the best. All right. So this is Tamsen Granger. And Dan Abuhoff. And we'll see you next week.